Hey guys, welcome back to the library. This time we're going to be going over what I read in the month of May, which wasn't really that much. I was finishing up my 2 classes that I was taking during that semester, so I didn't really have that much reading or that much extra time for reading. But I do still have 2 great books to go over today, so let's jump into it. Book number 1, The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri. So this novel is following the Ganguly family, an Indian and then Indian American family. And it starts with Ashok and Ashima getting married and coming to the US. Ashok had been working on his master's, I believe, and anyway, so he was coming back, but it was Ashima's first time. And so you're following kind of how she assimilates, I guess, and coming into the country and living here permanently, how she deals with the homesickness and the loss from being so far away from her own family, and that sort of thing. But even though Ashima is the heavy focus at the beginning of the novel, the perspective starts to shift and focus more on their first child. They have 2. The youngest is Sonia, who basically, grew up perfectly happy. She is still split in 2 like her older brother, in the sense that she is torn between the Indian culture that her parents want her so desperately to continue to embody, and then the American culture that she grew up in and that she is comfortable with. However, Sonia is a lot more well-adjusted than her older brother, and a large part of that comes down to the fact that her name was decided. So, to understand the main struggle of the book, you should know that Bengali culture kind of dictates that you have 2 names. You have a public name, the name that everybody knows you by, and then you have a family name or a pet name. So it also states that your oldest, wisest relative, more or less, is generally responsible for naming your child. So when Ashok and Ashima found out they were expecting, they wrote back home to India for Ashima's grandmother, great-grandmother, I think, to give them some names. But the letter that her grandmother wrote never actually got to them. So when the baby was born, they were only left with his pet name, which they had already chosen, which will come into play later. I'm going to elaborate on that. But the thing is, you're not supposed to be called by your pet name. You're supposed to have your proper name for the world. They didn't have one, so on his birth certificate it was just listed his pet name. Now this is another pull for this child, another split for this child, because not only will he be pulled later on in life between Indian and American culture, he's also pulled between his names alone. So identity plays a very, very heavy part in this novel. It should also be noted that his pet name is Gogol, which Gogol is from Nikolai Gogol, a Russian, Ukrainian, excuse me, writer who was predominantly known for kind of absurdist short stories, and one of his stories, The Overcoat, features very heavily in this novel. And so I highly recommend, if you have not read The Overcoat, if you are interested in reading this, giving it at least a glance over, because it does really pertain to the novel and really hold a very central place in the plot line and also in the characters. And I should also have more about Nikolai Gogol in next month's video, or for the month of June, because I did actually finish / reread some of his short stories that I had, so I'll be going over that next video. So that's kind of a rough overview of what's going on in the book. I found this to be a really fascinating story because I understand the difficulty of belonging to your name and, kind of finding out who you are in this crazy, crazy world. But I don't know what it's like to be pulled in different directions by a dual culture. Like Gogol and Sonia are Indian American. They're born in America, it's what they grew up in, they know all of that culture, but they're still taken every summer or so back to India to be, back in their parents' culture. And they just don't connect with it the same way that their parents do, the way that their parents would like them to. They still find themselves kind of lost and separated. Again, Sonia didn't have that extra weight of her name, Her given name is Sonali, but it was shortened to Sonia, and that's just it. You know, she didn't have to worry about who she is fundamentally down to a name. It just was a easier time for her than it was for her brother Gurgoyle, who is the main central part of the story after the beginning bit. The beginning bit is all about Ashima, but then Gurgoyle takes over as your predominant narrator and also the predominant plot structure. So not knowing what that feeling is, being split between two cultures, made this really eye-opening for me, because not only did it show moving from your homeland into a strange place where there's very few people around you that are like you, that understand you, and being largely isolated. That it offered the perspective on that, but then again, the dual cultures and also identity is the main theme of this novel. You know, who you are down to the very, very smallest detail, and Gurgoyle struggles with all of it. It's a really beautiful, powerful story about finding yourself and finding your place in the world, and I highly recommend it for everyone, regardless of your background, just because it is such a powerful, eye-opening story. Anyway, really, really good book. Really good book. I want to read more by her. Hey, next book. Book number 2, Shocking Life by Elsa Schiaparelli. This is a read. If you don't know who Elsa Schiaparelli is, I'm not very surprised, although we really all should. But she was a fashion designer, and in fact, in her heyday, she was the fashion designer. Her main competition was Coco Chanel, but according to Time magazine, Elsa Schiaparelli was the superior designer. So, Schiaparelli, oh my goodness, this woman invented everything from, you know, more comfortable athletic wear for women to built-in bras to mermaid cut dresses. I mean, literally everything. And actually in the description I'll put a link to just the list of things that Elsa Schiaparelli is responsible for, because so much of it makes up modern fashion. It's insane. But how Schiaparelli wasn't really around that long, and so that's why a lot of people are not familiar with it. But she left the fashion world not because of bankruptcy or because she had no more ideas, but simply because she felt she had done all there was. She didn't see the point in continuing. She thought, I've conquered the world. What else do I need to do? And then she left. She wrote the autobiography that we will read. But how Schiaparelli actually has reopened, which is really, really neat to me, because she did so much for the fashion world. But it was recently reopened. I believe they've had their first show in 2016, in like 50 some odd years. Anyway, again, it's on the website and it'll be in that link that I'll put at the bottom. But yeah, it's really, really cool to me that this amazing house has been given another chance at life, and I really hope that, I wish them the best. They've come up with some cool stuff. In terms of reading, you know, not just Schiaparelli the name or Schiaparelli the person, in terms of the read itself, I actually really enjoyed it. You know, it's snappy. You get a really good feel for the author herself. You know, she's feisty, she's independent, and these words really scream her, the same way that her clothing did. And it's kind of nice and refreshing, because autobiographies are really a mixed bag. You know, you either get just completely bland, accurate representation, like, oh, this is everything that I was, and she just throws it all out on the page. So I really enjoyed it for that reason. She seemed like a very fascinating person, and I've enjoyed learning more about her and kind of, in a way, getting to know her. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoy fashion, kind of in general, and fashion designers, so reading this was kind of a joy for me for that reason alone, and seeing what all she created and brought to the world was really, really enjoyable. I also think she was an interesting person. Again, that snappy, independent fierceness, I really enjoy that just in people in general. So reading her story from that perspective was a lot of fun. So yeah, if you're interested in the book, or either books, they'll be linked down in the description below. And I highly recommend checking out that website for Schiaparelli, because it's just crazy. I mean, we owe this woman so much, and so many people don't even know her name. But that was it. This is all I read for the month of May. The month of June is also going to be a little lackluster, because I only have one class left for college, and I'm taking it this summer. But it's a history-based class, and instead of reading like individual books, we're just reading from one big textbook, and it's not very interesting. But I will be trying to do some reading on my own, and I should have some good things coming up for July. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Again, everything will be linked down in the description below. If you want to see next month's, June's, into the library, then please subscribe and ring the notification bell so you know the second I upload it in a very, very, very timely manner. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, leave it a like. If you're interested in either the books, or if you've read them or anything like that, put it in the comments below, because I really want to talk about them. So anyway, thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.